All right, so yes, indeed, we're going to go ahead and talk about some of those matters. We've got Mr. Ikazo Akariwe here with us. He is a senior advocate of Nigeria and also the convener, We the People. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning. Nice to be here again.
Well, are we the people asking for state police now?
Oh, this is we the governors. Just wondering.
No, the people too. I mean, they have a say, but at the moment, yes.
I have long
They the
been,
governors, sorry.
yes, but I have long been a proponent of decentralization of the police force, in keeping with the principles of federalism. Like we had in the First Republic, we used to have, down to the native authorities, the police, and it is clear that that our federalism is too weighted on the unitary side. Too weighted. We are actually a Federal Republic of Nigeria, mostly in name and not in governance structure. We have states, but the states have to come to the center to collect allocations every month. That is really not the principle of federalism, and that was not the principle upon which independence was negotiated. Independence was negotiated, and all regions, the federating units, were in control of their resources, and they paid a tax of 50% to the central administration. But now, the central administration controls everything and gives allocations to the federating units. So even though it is said that there is no one-size-fits-all federalism, but the truth, if truth be told, federalism is weighted heavily in favor of the center. And it is understandable. We were for 30 years, approximately, under the control of military administration. And the military hierarchy is centralized. So the moment they came into office in 1966, they promulgated the Unification Decree and threw away the regions, and then they centralized everything. But it was necessary when we returned to democracy, it was necessary to go back to the principles of the First Republic. And so we have a dysfunctional situation where the center is policing the whole of the country. In my hometown, the police station there, I don't know who is the DPO now, but it used to be somebody from Gombe State. Nothing wrong with somebody from Gombe State. Perhaps somebody from my village is the DPO in his own state. But the point is, he can't even speak the language. The people don't buy into him. They see him as a stranger element. In fact, nobody in that station is from that area. So they would never report crimes. I recall once going to my hometown, and I told my uncle, I was going to stay in a hotel. I told him the name of the hotel, and he says, don't go and stay there. The owner of the hotel is a crook, a criminal. He told me that. He will never divulge that to the police. So there are many psychological and sociological reasons why we need to rework our federalism. And central to the reworking of federalism is the policing. And the fact that the police has largely failed, even the army, to contain the rising incidences of banditry and kidnapping is because of this dysfunctional nature of the federalism. I understand that there are large spaces in Nigeria, particularly in the north, that are completely ungoverned, completely unpoliced. I have traveled by road from Enugu to Maiduguri when I was the chairman of the bar many years ago. I went from Enugu through Jos to Bauchi, Biu. I was amazed at the diversity in the country, and then you get to some places, you don't see any bush, you just see savanna land, grass for miles and miles and miles away. You know, it's in the south, we see a lot of the policing, you know. We don't see no policemen in those places. By road, 17 hours.
So,
17 hours.
Do you subscribe to some who think, at the moment, even as the laws are presently now, we are not even utilizing it because people like your colleagues, Mr. Falana as well, thinks there's a council. And that council, they can convene. They can take decisions. Yes. They can have arms for certain states or things like that can happen. And he feels we're not even doing as such, that even if we apply all of those, we'll get some results before we even get to the question of having multi-level policing.
Yeah, I actually, I've had this conversation one-on-one with Mr. Femi.
Okay.
Falana, SAN, who I respect.
It must have been very heated.
My mentor. He's my mentor. I see him as a mentor in human rights issues. And but having said that, I agree and disagree. I agree that the laws have been underutilized, especially the Nigerian Police Council, which is in Schedule 1 of the Constitution. It stipulated that we never hear about them. We never hear that they ever met. But we need multi-level policing to give proper and fuller expression to our federalism. We're a federal republic. And the states must be able to run their own internal security. I know the fears. I know what happened in the First Republic and the abuses. But do you know, the abuses of the first generation governors of this republic, the 1999 to 2007 set of governors, is far more than the abuses today. With each set of new governors, the principles of democracy begin to take root. And we find that if we had never had military truncation of democracy in 1966, today the policing would have been fantastic, and the state governors and the regional governors and premiers.
How do you stop the police from being beholden to the governor using them as a puppet?
Good question. I will answer your question with a question. How did we stop the judges, state judges, from being beholden to the governors of their states? Something happened.
Have we stopped it?
The NJC, yes. The NJC. The states don't pay the salaries of the judges.
But they're still appointed by the governors.
But through a process that involves the federal government. There's a process involving the federal government. You can't even sack your CJ. No governor can sack his CJ. The NJC, which is a federal organ, must give approval, must give assent. So we need to transport the NJC, the principles behind the NJC, to the NPC. Fortunately, Schedule 1 provides for the NJC at Section 20 to 22 of Schedule 1, and then the NPC is provided for in Schedule 1 also, Sections 27 and 28.
Are we transporting it strictly? Because you say without input from the federal government. I thought we're trying to wean ourselves of that control.
I see the slight contradiction in my view, but we must federalize gradually, the way China is capitalizing gradually. You know, some regions in China, some federating units in China are capitalist, and some are still communist, and they gradually introduce capitalism. That is what we need to do at this stage. And that's what we did with the NJC. The NJC has, to some extent, weaned the state's judiciaries away from control by the governors. So the worst a governor can do is break down the neck of his CJ and say that judge is giving all kinds of unfavorable judgments, transfer him to one remote place where there are no cases. And that's the worst he can do. He can't sack. Okay, so now if we went back to Schedule 1 and looked at the NPC, the Nigerian Police Council, and we just take one or two thoughts from the NJC and put there. Already we have the NPC, all state governors are members of the NPC, and so on and so forth. The next thing we should now do is to put in a clause that every state is empowered to have their own police. You can decide to call them civil defense. You can call them gendarmes. You can give them a name different from the police. Every state is entitled, is empowered to have their own now. But the chiefs of the state police will not be appointed by the governors without the input of the NPC, Nigeria Police Council. the DPOs, if you like, whatever we call them at that level, cannot be appointed or removed. So you find that, yes, there will always be people who will be beholden to the chief executive, but you can say no. When the chief executive sends you to go and harass his opponents, a person who has natural integrity can say, I can't do it, knowing that the man can't remove you.
Is the MPC functional now?
To the best of my knowledge and belief, it is not. I mean, you are in the press, and you are in the best position to tell me if you've ever heard of a president convening a meeting of the MPC. The last I heard of a president convening a meeting of the MPC was when Obasanjo was the president. I recall there was a meeting like that. Since then, we've never had MPC convened. This is just there in the statute books. But convening it is not enough. I'm suggesting that we need to tweak it a little and put in a clause in the Constitution allowing states to run their police, but remove effective operational control, as has been done with the NJC, from the governors of the state, so as to help the governors not to abuse the powers. But again, let me quickly add a caveat. The states are too small and too many. It's too small and too many. What we need really is regional policing. There are 6 zones in the country. Let no states have their police. Let each zone have their own. A different police from the federal. Federal government has their police. Every zone has their police. And the 6 or 5 or 7 governors of each zone will have equidistant and equivalent control over their police. The laws will be worked out, how they will operate, who will be in charge. Perhaps every year a governor has direct oversight over the police or something like that. But still have the NJC philosophy governing the police. So I would rather say a federal police and then 6 regional polices.
You know, I'm listening to this conversation, even though I'm supposed to be asking questions, and it just is like deja vu. We've been here before. We've had these conversations before. In fact, there was an entire conference done on this, at least while I have been a journalist. If there's anything we can remember that of 2014, where these matters were tabled. And one will have to ask, what will it take to jolt us to action? I mean, what will it take? Because we know, as it currently stands, that this arrangement that we have with regards to security, with regards to how we're construed, it's not the most effective. Some people have said, well, maybe it's because we've not really put the laws. I mean, Chamberlain has already made reference to that particular question and what some other lawyers believe about our Constitution. Some people have even made reference to the fact that the police, as we currently speak, they're grossly understaffed. We've not even employed as many people as we need to into a central police force. So is it really fair to accuse them of not being effective when we have not even given them all of the, we've not equipped them sufficiently for them to be as effective as they ought to be? So I don't know, when you look at this, what do you think needs to happen for us to be jolted into action? Because at this point, I think Nigerians, I don't know if they want to still have a conversation. I think what a number of people want to see and feel is that they want to feel secure.
Yeah. The problem with Nigeria is there are 2 forces. There are 2 contending and contesting forces in Nigeria. One is the arch-conservative forces that don't want you to touch Nigeria. Leave it as it is. It is the will of God, the will of Allah, if you like, the way Nigeria is. And then there is the progressive forces. So far, the conservative forces govern Nigeria. And even when a progressive is at the presidency, is surrounded by the conservatives. You see, our traditional institution in particular is both advantageous and disadvantageous. A leader who will move Nigeria forward, we have to be ready to incur the wrath of the traditional institution. Ignore them. Ignore them.
But even and insist on some things. They're crying right now, aren't they?
Well, now to go to the very issues of policing, what needs to happen was the question you asked me. For us to move forward, and since there was a consensus on it in the Jonathan conference in 2014, Now, what needs to happen is a president with vision and guts. A president with vision and guts. Obasanjo had guts, but Obasanjo did not see the point. As a soldier, as a military man, he couldn't bring himself, he couldn't see the point in further decentralizing the country. Perhaps now he has seen it. We need a person with the guts of Obasanjo and with vision to like a steamroller, roll over conservative tendencies.
You don't think this government can do it?
I think, frankly, I think that the man at the helm now, his antecedents as a pro-democracy activist, even a radical, even a restructurist, which in the last 20 years he has downplayed. But as the governor of Lagos, he had the guts to set up fresh local government since the constitution was ossified. The constitution could not be amended, nobody wanted to. So he showed guts, and I know he can do it. Whether at this stage, having gotten to the apex of his ambition and the apex of the country, he's one of only 16 people, not even up to 16, who have been the president of Nigeria. Whether he's ready to rock the boat is the question, or whether he just have his day and go like others. And like the Ruben about the suspicion of some supernatural forces over Aso Rock, the bats and everything, whether the supernatural forces that appear to hold this country in captivity and keep us retrogressed will allow. But I think that Bola Ahmed Tinubu has shown the antecedent, has the capacity to do it. And I think that his VP is very conservative, and that's where the problem will start from. Because his VP, I watched him on TV say before he became VP, let all those who want to restructure Nigeria go to hell. So you have a man who built a career around restructuring Nigeria as president, and a man who says go to hell to do.
No, can we look at that in the same breath as multi-level or regional policing as you speak when you talk about what do you call it, restructuring Nigeria? And they're two different things. Though.
Okay. Well, it's a matter now of semantics. I like that. I interpret multi-level policing as part of restructuring Nigeria, but perhaps I'm putting a cog in the wheel of progress by seeing it that way. Perhaps we should remove restructure from the conversation and say, what does Nigeria need in the midst of state failure, imminent state failure? That's where we are now. Imminent state failure. And insecurity on the scale that we have in Nigeria today is clearly one of the marks of imminent state failure.
If I could just jump in at that.
Yes. Yeah.
This small arms survey, they did a survey.
Small arms, yes.
On stats on small arms and light weapons.
Yes.
I think the governor of Kaduna was here with us, and he also did make some reference as to some of what he had tried to do while he was in Senate. He said in 2020, Nigeria had an estimate 6.2 million arms in the hands of civilians, excluding those of the military and law enforcement agencies.
Incredible.
So if we thought that we were still playing games with this, 6.2 million. Does the police even have this figure?
That can ground an army. That can empower an army. I told members of my household, wife and children and friends, I said, when you're driving your car, and anybody hits you, anybody hits you, don't come down to argue. Just reverse and drive away, because somebody could pull a gun and blow your brains out. That's where we are now. There are too many small arms everywhere. I said, don't bother. Go and fix your car. Don't get into it. That's it. Now, do you know, I have cases. I live in Enugu. I have court cases in places I ordinarily used to go by road. Example, in Warri. I'm embarrassed to say that to go to court in Warri, where I used to drive from Enugu to Warri, I fly from Enugu to Abuja and Abuja to Warri. I do not dare go by road again. After my last experience going by road to Warri, I had an awful experience on the way.
Wow.
Where people had strewn nails on the highway, and my car went over the nails, and then I looked in the bush and I saw these people with their cattle looking like they're waiting. They're waiting for you to stop. I told my driver, don't stop, keep moving. Fortunately for me, I looked in there. And another time I was coming to Abuja by road. Sometimes I like traveling by road, read newspapers and books I've been longing to read. That's what I enjoy doing. only to get to a point on the highway after Abaji, and this is before kidnapping became so bad, and I saw that there was nobody else on the road. I told the driver, slow down, and I said, slow down. Young men began to jump out of the gutter between the two lanes, and began to chase after us, and that's when I noticed young men in the bushes, all facing the bush and looking back. Insecurity everywhere. The time has come for us to think outside the box. We need to be better policed, and I am a proponent of returning to the First Republic principle, where the policing was devolved down to even local government. I know that it was abused, but we have thrown away the baby with the bathwater. We have infantilized the federating units. What has happened is that we have said to the federating units, you can't do this. You can't do this. So we are infantilizing the federating unit. It's like a father who refuses to allow his children grow. Your child at 6 years old, you treated him in a certain way. That child is now 30 years old, and you are still infantilizing him. The federal government must release the federating units. Let there be mistakes. Let mistakes be made. We will grow out of it. After all, let's look at America. In the days of the agitation, racial agitations, Martin Luther King and so on, you remember the story in Alabama where Governor George Wallace refused to obey the instructions of the federal government, President JFK. JFK says schools be desegregated. It was within his remit as the president. Desegregate all schools. And George Wallace said, never. I won't do it. And so the federal police in America, FBI, had to escort a black girl to a certain school. They escorted her, and the state police or troopers, or whatever they're called, were there to resist. And JFK says, if you don't phone George Wallace, I will declare a state of emergency in your state, if you don't allow the girl to go in. And so he called his troopers, and they stayed aside, and that girl went in, the first black girl to attend a white school. If a state or a region or zone, geopolitical zone, abuses their police, the federal government can do something about it. Hey, governor, we hear you've arrested your opponents, you've arrested the Speaker of the House, you keep doing that, release all of them. We have credible intelligence that you are doing that on political grounds. Release them. And the man dilly-dallies in releasing them. The federal government declares a state of emergency. The security of the citizens of that state it cannot be guaranteed with this man there, moving for 6 months. If the federal government wields the big stick on the governors, I tell you, the governors will handle their police, the state police, under their control with care, knowing that they can lose their office for 6 months.
Also speaks to whether or not about it. Yes. My sincere apologies if you can hear me, Mr. Kariwe. Perhaps one of the issues that to consider on that score would also be whether or not such things will be politicized, because perhaps that's one of the issues that people have had with the idea of state police in the first place, the fears of the whole thing being politicized. I love the fact that you went back to the First Republic, where we had the local police at the time. Now, at what point? Because there are those who would also say that even if there's going to be abuse at the state policing level, the state governors themselves have a responsibility to ensure that the local governments themselves are active. How about that for starters? Because there are those who believe that even the state governors themselves that are asking for autonomous police authority under themselves, they have refused to release the reins of influence they have on the local government. So even the local government policing that you are suggesting will never see the light of day under the governors who have refused to release them, from their own influence.
Yes, these are some of the problems we are faced with. And there is no problem that cannot be solved. Men have gone to the moon. Men have created mechanical birds that can fly 20 hours in the air. and land, our problems can be solved. It is incontrovertible that the state governors have unacceptable control over the local government. But these are problems that should be solved. And I believe the federal government has a role to play. I believe that the federal governments, with the exception of President Obasanjo, the federal governments we've had have been too laid back with the excesses of the states. I believe in wielding, excesses of the states. I believe in wielding the big stick on the governors. If a governor will not allow his local government function according to the Constitution, I think the president has a duty to invite the governor and say, I instruct you to obey the Constitution for the health of our democracy, for the strengthening of our institutions. And if a governor will not, if I were the president, I would declare a state of emergency. And the state of emergency can be explained. There's no shortage of good reason for declaring a state of emergency. I will do that. And if I did that in one state, 35 states will toe the line. And I'm not asking the states as the president to bow down before the federal government, obey the Constitution. Let's go the apron strings of the local government areas. That's what I will do.
No, well, another thing. Okay.
Something else. Yes.
Please go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes. Are you saying something?
No, go ahead on that same issue.
Something else I would do. My idea of what we need to do is a bit different from America. You know, America has their federal police, their state police, their county council police, their county police, and so on. But what I'm thinking we should do in Nigeria is rework the Constitution and donate to the federal police authority over offenses of 3 years imprisonment and above. Donate to the state police offenses of between 6 months and under 3 years. That will be their jurisdiction. And then local government, any offense which in the statute books is for 6 months and is under 6 months, the local government should police those ones. In that way, we free the police to do whatever they have to do.
Now,
the federal police has authority over all offenses of 3 years imprisonment and above in the whole of the country.
Well, just one last thing from me.
Individual states, and remember, I have expressed a preference.
Yes.
For the zones. I prefer regional to states policing. Let the 6 zones have their police. Let the zones have look after offenses of under 3 years and above 6 months, and then the local governments the rest.
Well, it's gladdening.
But
yes, sir.
Where we are today, we are in danger of state failure because the policing has failed. And no matter how you arm the police, no matter how you fund the police, no matter if you employ 5 million citizens into the police force, I think that the basic structure is wrong. That the police is supervised from the headquarters.
Well, Mr. Kariwe, perhaps that's one of the issues. My apologies if you don't mind me butting in. Perhaps one of the issues is the responsibility not just of the National Assembly, but of the state houses of assembly themselves, which, as you know, many people believe is under the control, so to speak, of each of the governors in their various terrains. Now, the address of the reinstatement or the emphasis being sent from the governors is to the National Assembly that they should give them the authority to have state police. Now, that has been difficult over time. The issue of local government autonomy by the state governors themselves has been contested by the governors over the years. Something needs to give. what must give? You talked about us enforcing the Constitution. The people who have sworn to abide by the Constitution, many people, such as yourself perhaps, have insisted that they have obeyed the Constitution in breach over the years. Who should be compelling who to enforce the authorities, the tenets of the Constitution?
Well, first of all, let me say I disagree with the governors. I think I'm probably repeating myself. The governors want to have operational control of their own police. I say no, let us have rather regional policing, 6 geopolitical zones. Each zone should have their police, and no particular governor has control over the police in his zone, but the 6 governors in that zone, or 5 governors, or 7 governors, as the case may be, will jointly and severally, collectively be in control, subject to my suggestion on the Nigerian Police Council, NPC, being restructured after the type and order of the NJC, which gives NJC some operational control to limit the powers of state governors over the judges. But now you asked me, who is in charge of enforcing the Constitution? How can we get the governors to give local governments their constitutionally stipulated autonomy? I think I said it before. My answer is the big stick. The president of the country, the buck stops at the table of the president of the country. If anything goes wrong, it is him. If there's a riot, if there's violence in a remote local government area in the country, yes, the governor has a say, local government chairman has a say, but sometimes the president drafts in troops. Remember, under President Jonathan, he had to declare state of emergency in some local government areas in the northeast. That was far removed from him, but he had to do that. So my view is that governors need to be told in no uncertain terms that it is a breach of national security, a potential breach of national security if the local governments don't have their autonomy.
Just quickly, why do you think that Ebubeagwu and Amotekun are not having the bite which a number of people thought they'll have?
That's horrible. Just yesterday, I was listening to my boss, Akeredolu's video, God bless him, so rest in peace, where he was lamenting, why won't Amotekun have arms? And the people they have to deal with, the people in the forest, have arms. And remember that the perception of Nigerians is our reality. The perception, not helped by the fact that General Danjuma himself, an institution like General Danjuma, says that the military is in cahoots with these people, the bandits. I'm sorry, but former chief of army staff, former minister of defense. Right. So what we need at this point is the regions, the states, okay, and Amotekun is not a state thing, it is a regional thing. Yeah, they need to be armed. Why give them authority with one hand and take from the other hand? We need to arm them. And if there's an abuse, I've given the example of JFK and George Wallace in the United States of America. If the governors abuse their police and begin to use them as private armies,
there's a way out.
There's a way out. The president declares a state of emergency. All right. That's the way out.
Well, I have to thank you for coming on, Ikeazu Akarewe, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and also the convener of We the People. Always a pleasure to have you on.
I'm glad to be here anytime.
Yes, indeed. So business will be coming up next, but we'll have a little stint about some background concerning what has been done even up until today about this call for state police.